Curtis LeMay arrived to take over the bombing campaign in early 1945. Almost at once, he recognized the futility of high-altitude precision bombing. A veteran of the famed Regensburg raid of 1943 over Germany, LeMay had always been an outspoken advocate of strategic pinpoint bombing. Now faced with a situation where all the training and tactics he believed in were failing, he moved quickly to adapt.
General LeMay determines that in order to accomplish his mission, he will approach destruction of the Japanese war industries by carrying out a low-level, nighttime incendiary campaign against those cities. And this represents a major policy shift, and he does this without permission from Washington.
No longer would the B-29s go in high and aim at select targets. Instead, LeMay ordered his men to go in low at night. Tokyo would be their first target using these new tactics. The change shocked his airmen.
When the operations officer said, that the target is going to be Tokyo, the bombing altitude will be 8,000 feet. When he said that, there was just a gasp that went up. And rumors were swirling around, about how LeMay expects to have 50% of the plane shot down.
Those who survived the attack never forgot the carnival of the macabre that unfolded around them that night over Tokyo.
The fires were really going by the time we got over the target.
The low-altitude night raid against Tokyo devastated the Japanese capital.
This first raid against Tokyo is very successful. It virtually wipes out the entire downtown area, probably kills somewhere around 40,000 people and leaves over 1 million homeless, but it's very effective in attacking the kind of cottage war industries that Japan has at this point. Based on that success, General LeMay will order further incendiary raids. Now down the road, as they continue these, there'll be a shortage of incendiary bombs, which will force the Air Force to go to a combination of daylight regular bombing raids and nighttime incendiary raids in tandem, working together in an attempt to destroy Japanese industry.
Japanese pilots defended their cities with every ounce of skill and courage they possessed.
We were dropping bombs on their homes. Tokyo was where they lived, and they were young guys that wanted to defend themselves and their homes and their families, just like we would if we were up over San Francisco or some other local city. We would be pretty upset with whoever the enemy was.
The Japanese fought back fiercely, at times ramming the B-29s with their own fighters.
They were almost ready to go into kamikaze when all this was happening, and they did a couple times at night. They tried to make a move on us and at night ram us.
As we were watching a lot of our buddies in the other B-29s next to us that were dropping their bombs and incendiaries, getting knocked down because they were getting hit, and we lost a lot of our fellow B-29s.
Daytime or night, anti-aircraft fire remained an ever-present danger.
Every searchlight in Nagoya and every flak gun in Nagoya was on us. We were just bathed in light, and there's this wall of flak out in front of us.
nighttime attacks took an emotional toll on the airmen as well. Flying alone in the dark, they rarely saw other B-29s. Night fighters would stalk them, flak would claw them out of the sky, but their buddies would never know what happened to those who didn't return the following morning.
When we lost somebody, we never knew what happened to them because it was at night, we were flying individually, radio silence, they just didn't come back.
And you always wonder whatever happened to those guys, you know.
Through the spring of 1945, the 20th burned Japan's major cities to the ground.
These raids are extremely effective, but they're also very destructive. Anywhere from 80 to 95 or more % of all the major cities of Japan are destroyed during these attacks.
You know, here we've been trained for high-altitude precision bombing. We're knocking out a war industry. And here, all of a sudden, we're burning down cities. And this guy says that we have to burn these cities down because the way the Japanese operate, the way their war industry operates, is that they do all kinds of piecework all over the city in their homes. And every morning or every evening, trucks go by and pick up these parts and take them to the factories where they are assembled. And the only way we can knock out their industry is to knock out the whole city. I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's what we were told.
As their cities died, Japan's war effort collapsed.
The B-29 effort, involving the largest, most advanced plane in the world, thousands of tons of bombs dropped on Japanese cities, is often given credit for having ended the war, destroyed Japanese industry, strangled the Japanese economy. In fact, the lion's share of the credit probably should go to the American submarine fleet that sank most Japanese merchant shipping, so that by the end of the war, very, very little in the way of raw materials or food were getting into the home islands, and Japanese industry had basically ground to a halt.
It was a gruesome campaign. Hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children died in the flames. Though the B-29 is remembered as the torch that set Japan afire, superforts took part in many other missions. As the war wound down, they were used to mine the last operating Japanese harbors. These mines destroyed dozens of ships and closed most of Japan's remaining ports. The few merchant ships that had evaded the deadly American submarine wolf packs through 1945 now discovered they had no safe havens at all. At the same time, B-29 squadrons launched leaflet raids over the imperial homeland and areas in Southeast Asia still under occupation. Over Japan proper, these leaflets warned civilians to leave their cities, for they were about to be firebombed. In the occupation areas, such as Burma, the leaflets dropped promised Japanese troops that they would be well fed and treated if they surrendered. Though these primitive psychological campaigns had little seeming effect, they did offer the air crews a break from all the tension and terror of the firebombing raids. As the bombing continued, the capture of Iwo Jima finally gave the B-29 crews a safe haven between Japan and the Marianas.
There were many crippled planes that would not have made it back to their bases in the Marianas, and they needed a short stop, a place where they could just make it to Iwo and get down and get repaired, and they could make it on. The other thing that happened, though, is that now they were close enough to the homeland of Japan that fighters could go with them as cover. So this was a huge benefit, and they called them the Little Friends.
Even before the island was totally secured by the Marines, crippled superforts began making emergency landings there.
Oh, we got shot up on a number of missions. Had engines hit, and on one return we were coming back to we got shot up. Engines shot up rather badly over Tokyo, daytime mission, and the pilot told us that there's a good chance that we were not going to get back and might have to go into the ocean. And we were getting close to Iwo Jima, which had pretty well been taken now by the Marines. However, not completely. There was still a portion of Iwo Jima that was still at war.
Many B-29 crews were not lucky enough to reach Iwo, let alone the desolate stretches of the Pacific Ocean. They fell into the hands of the Japanese.
As a matter of fact, what they told us, if there was any way whatsoever, is to get out and over the ocean, do it, and bail out over the ocean. We all had Mae West, and we all had dinghies. And if the airplane ditched and it was successful, it had a big dinghy up over the bomb bays.
B-29 crews who got shot down over Japan faced a unique situation. Over in Europe, the heavy bomber crews who got shot down over Europe had a chance of linking up with resistance elements. They looked European, so they could escape and evade, and it was done. But even if they were captured, they were basically taken to prisoner of war camps and treated humanely. In Japan, that wasn't the case.
Of all Americans who were captured by the Japanese, about 40% died. The B-29 crews were called special prisoners. They were given a designation and were treated separately. And my understanding is that about 5% of those survived. All of them had, starvation issues. All of them had been brutally beaten. All of them had been forced labor and held in, terrible, filthy conditions. At the very end of the war, many of the prison camps that held B-29ers, some of the Japanese guards executed them.
By August, the B-29 raids had devastated 66 cities, laying waste to some 178 square miles of densely populated urban areas. According to Japanese sources, the raids killed 241,000 people, while injuring another 313,000. The destruction left almost 9 million people homeless. At the same time, the attacks ruined the Japanese economy. But it would take 2 more nightmarish missions to bring Japan's leaders to the surrender table.